Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to OpenView's webinar series. My name is Casey Renner, and I handle community engagement here at OpenView. For those of you who may not know, OpenView is a venture capital firm based in Boston, and we focus on expansion stage software companies and helping them acquire, retain, and grow the right customers and talent. To find out more, please visit our website at openviewpartners.com. Today's webinar is on the rise of account-based sales development, and leading the presentation today is John Miller, CEO and co-founder of Engagio. Prior to his role as CEO and co-founder, he was a co-founder at Marketo, a leader in marketing automation. And he's a speaker and writer about sales and marketing best practices, and is the author of multiple books, including Engagio's new book, Clear and Complete Guide to Account-Based Sales Development. And John, I know you'll give us a little more background on that when I turn it over to you. And then joining John today, we'll also be doing a live Q&A with an Engagio customer, Mitchell Hansen, who's the Director of Marketing at Zapproved, on realizing sort of the power of account-based everything. So before I turn it over to you two, a few housekeeping items. There will be time for Q&A, so as questions come up, please use the chat feature on the left side of your screen, and we'll try to get to as many as possible. And we'll be sending out the deck and the recording afterwards, so keep an eye out for that. And all that being said, John, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you very much, and hello to everyone. I love working with OpenView. So again, thank you for the opportunity to kind of be here today. So the agenda for today is I'm going to start by introducing what I call account-based everything. Now you might be wondering, why am I talking about account-based everything on a webinar that's supposed to be about account-based sales development? Well, hopefully I'll explain that in just a minute. And then I'm going to get into the nitty-gritty details. What's the process for doing it actually look like? If you want to make the transition to an account-based world, how do you actually do it? And then I'll also include what I call some hacks for account-based everything. These are the nitty-gritty details, like technical things you should be thinking about, as you make this new transition. And then as we just heard, I'm very excited to be able to wrap things up with the Q&A with Mitchell from Zapproved. So with no further ado, let's get into the meat of the presentation. As I said, starting with the whole idea of, why are we even talking about account-based everything? So to motivate that, let's go back to my days at Marketo, where in addition to being the co-founder, I was the original chief marketing officer. And we built a demand generation engine that I think became moderately famous for the fact that we were able to generate as much as 80% of all the pipeline that the sales team was closing. In other words, salespeople did basically no prospecting. All the revenue was coming through a marketing-driven funnel, and it worked great. We grew really fast. But as Marketo matured and we decided that we wanted to operate more upmarket, we created a list of name target enterprise accounts. Incidentally, we were also trying to do cross-sell to our existing customer base. What those both had in common was there was a list of named accounts. And turns out that traditional marketing tactics that we were using that worked so well for the smaller businesses just weren't working to go after this more narrow list of big businesses. And I came up with this analogy to explain what was going on. And in full disclosure, this is based on some of the work that Aaron Ross and Jason Lemkin have written about. But what I realized is that the traditional marketing process we were doing was kind of like fishing with a net, where we didn't care which specific fish we caught. We just cared, did we catch enough fish to then run through our funnel and our process? And as I said, it worked really well to catch lots of small fish. But when you're going after big fish, well, it just doesn't make sense to wait around to see if any of those big fish happen to swim into your net. It's not efficient. And you get a lot of bycatch, fish you don't want. What you need to do instead is fish with a spear. You need to proactively go after those target accounts. So we started a whole new set of tactics, and what I realized was that the Marketo platform and Eloqua and the other systems might be really good for demand generation, but they weren't that good for phishing with spears. And so I founded Engagio to be the platform for phishing with spears, just like marketing automation is your platform for phishing with nets. We started the company on Pi Day, March 14th, 2015, and I guess my timing was pretty good because, this is talking about account-based marketing, not account-based sales development, but the idea of account-based marketing has certainly taken over, the B2B world. One writer I work with likes to say, it's now hotter than a hot thing in a hot oven on a hot day. And it's really, really taken off. But this webinar is not about account-based marketing. It's about account-based sales development. And the reason why is because as much as I'm a fan of the idea of account-based marketing, I've come to realize that it is not sufficient. If you're going to fish with spears and reach out to target accounts, your marketing channels alone will only get you about 15% penetration, according to the analyst firm Topo. And that makes sense. If all you have at your disposal are marketing tactics like account-based advertising or direct mail or holding a steak dinner, you're not really going to be able to reach out and grab those decision makers at your big strategic accounts. If you really want to connect with a decision maker at a strategic account, you need a human to reach out to them, to make a phone call, to send a personalized human email, to interact with them socially, or maybe do all three in a triple tap. And that's why sales development is the tip of the spear for your account-based activities. And according to Topo, the best sales development functions are adopting this whole idea of being account-based. Because we're going after big, complex companies, there's more than one decision maker in those accounts, right? There's complex buying committees. And, we therefore need to be more relevant and more effective to go across these accounts. When done well, account-based sales development is actually the most effective account-based tactic available to you. And again, that just makes sense because humans are really, what's driving, human interactions is what's driving this whole thing. So account-based sales development, super important idea. But I worry a lot about silos. And what I worry about are organizations that have, the marketing team saying, hey, look at me, we do account-based marketing. And then you have your sales development team saying, hey, look at me, we do account-based sales development. And even some sales teams, for whatever reason, are saying, hey, we do account-based sales, as if that's not what they were always doing. But again, I think that what happens there is perpetuating a silo. If you're a sales development team and you're telling the world, I do account-based sales development, you're kind of telling marketing that this is, stay away, this is not for you. Similarly, if you do account-based marketing, you're telling the sales world, hey, stay away, this is my thing. I think, instead of these siloed processes, we need a concept, a name, for this idea of fishing with spears, we need a new name that really is a bigger tent that encapsulates and captures, everybody. And that's why I call it not account-based sales development, but account-based everything, which is the process of orchestrating personalized, relevant interactions across the account, the target account, synchronizing your sales development activities with your marketing activities, and even with your sales and customer success activities. And so that's what we're talking about today. Fishing with spears, which I'm going to call account-based everything. Hopefully, you're excited about it. It makes sense. Turns out when you go after these big named accounts, and you reach out to them, you're reaching higher into the organization. You are reaching into bigger companies, so you're creating much larger, more strategic deals. And so the ROI of this, is really, really good. So the question obviously then is, okay, how do I actually do it? Sounds good, but what do I do? Well, as promised, I think there's a 3-step process for implementing this concept. To explain that, let's go back to the traditional demand gen world. The way that works is we tend to start with an offer. Like, hey, I have a white paper. The second step is to then figure out the channels you're going to use to promote that offer. Say, for example, I'm going to send an email blast to my database to promote this white paper. And then the third step is you figure out who you're going to actually send that email blast to. So you log into Marketo and you make your smart list and you identify the segments. Account-based everything flips that all around. And it starts with the who. Which accounts are we going after, and which people at those accounts are going to be the key personas we want to touch. The second step is to figure out what can we say that will be most relevant and most effective for touching these target accounts. In a nutshell, the whole idea of focusing on a smaller set of accounts is that it gives us the resources to be more relevant and therefore more effective. So that's step 2. And then the third step, and only then, do you figure out the channels and the tactics and the campaigns and the messages you're going to actually use to reach out to those target accounts. So the process for account-based everything is who, then what, and then where. So let's talk about that now, really starting with the who. How do we figure out which accounts and which people we want to go after? So there's a lot of writing out there on the account selection process, and there's a lot of vendors ranging from data vendors and predictive vendors who can help you with it, both identifying the accounts and identifying the people. What I want to focus on for today's webinar is a slightly more subtle but important point, which is the fact that there are different styles of account-based everything, and your account selection process needs to map target accounts to the different tiers or styles. So let me take a minute to explain it, because I think this is a really important point. At the highest level, you have what I call the classic style. And I call it the classic style because it's most similar to what the ITSMA calls account-based marketing. ITSMA is the firm that actually coined the term account-based marketing. And they talk about treating each account as a market of one, which means you create a rich, detailed account plan to really understand everything about that account, and then you use that information to create completely customized, bespoke programs. Put another way, you take all the people in these top accounts out of your marketing automation. You take them out of your lead nurturing, and you want to make sure that every touch, every interaction at these big strategic top accounts is personalized, reviewed, and approved by a human. Nothing should ever go to these accounts without the account executive knowing about it and signing off on it at a minimum. Now, this is just good old target account selling, and it works really, really well, but as you can expect, it's hard to scale. You're sort of taking the automation out of it, if you will. And so, you're probably only going to do this top level for a handful of accounts. Part of the reason account-based thinking has taken off is because the emergence of this light Tier 2 and the hybrid Tier 3 styles makes it scalable to many more companies than before. So the light style, this Tier 2, this is going to be a lower overall level of research, maybe just like one page as opposed to a multi-page account plan. You are going to make sure to do your data build out. You want to identify the key contacts that map to each of your key personas at each of these Tier 2 accounts. You want to make sure then that when you're talking to the key personas at a Tier 2 account, that they get personalized, relevant touches, but maybe you can automate interactions to everybody else who's not kind of part of your core buying committee. This approach clearly scales to a much greater number. You can probably have a couple hundred of these kinds of accounts. And then the third tier scales effectively as much as you want, because this hybrid approach is kind of about using traditional marketing tactics that aren't personalized to the specific account, but are targeted to your account list. The classic example of this is account-based advertising, where if you're going to do display ads, might as well only show them to the accounts that you care about, even if every account is seeing the same ad. So automated touches are okay at this tier 3. My recommendation is, they're still important accounts, so make the effort to personalize to the industry and the persona level, even if it's not to the individual company level. And as I said, that one can scale to the thousands. So the key here, the right number of accounts is the number of accounts that you can deliver this style of personalization, consistently and accurately. So that might mean you have 0 top-tier accounts, or maybe you really focus there and you have 10. Whatever is the right number for your organization is the right answer, but marketing and sales have to be aligned on the account list. I think sales should own it. Marketing should support the process. So that's a deep dive on part of the who. Let's move on now to the what. How are we going to reach out to these key people, these accounts, in a way that's going to be most effective? One of the things that's important to keep in mind, especially if you're on the sales development team, is that sales doesn't need your help to reach out to the people they already know. They want you to knock on the doors of the people they don't already know. And there's a name for that, right? When done badly, it's cold calling and it's sales spam. And unfortunately, there's been a huge rise in this over the last 4 or 5 years. My inbox is flooded 3, 4, 5 of these emails a day with templated, generic, crappy emails that look like this one that show 0 signs that this person spent even a minute to try to personalize it to be more relevant and specific to me. It's all about them, not about us. And when I get crap like this, I'm doing the same thing that you're probably doing. I'm opting out, I'm tuning out, I'm tossing out. I'm literally hitting the spam button, making it impossible for that person to ever reach me again, and I'm hurting their reputation, which makes them harder to reach other people going forward. So we're in this weird place when it comes to sales emails. 10 years ago, marketing spam flooded our inboxes. But fortunately, we figured out how to squash it through a combination of legal regulation and even more effectively, spam filters that were able to block it out. And at this point, our inboxes are pretty clean of marketing spam. But sales development folks over the last couple of years figured out a workaround, a loophole. They figured out that if they send an email from their personal email account that looks like it was coming like an individual personalized email, that it gets through the spam filters, right? And as much as I'm a fan of Aaron Ross, his whole idea of sending emails that say, hey, can you let me know the person at Engagio responsible for purchasing IT software? Like that approach is just the epitome of what I'm talking about, of this kind of sales spam. And anybody who's relying on those tactics is deluding themselves if they think that this tactic will continue to work. Just like the marketing spam got blocked, we are very close to the technology evolving that's going to start to block this sales spam. And so when you're thinking about account-based sales development, I think you have to ask yourself the question of why in God's name would you risk the most important people at your most important accounts hitting the spam button and blocking your ability to interact with them forever? You've got to find a way to make the most of every interaction. You've got to find a way to increase your odds of success, and you do that by being more relevant. According to the ITSMA, 75% of executives will read unsolicited marketing materials if it contains ideas that are relevant to their business, where relevant means it's based on a knowledge and understanding of their industry, of their unique business issues, and it actually has fresh ideas to advance the business. If you've read The Challenger Sale, this should sound really familiar. The best salespeople are teaching their prospects with business ideas, and they're tailoring what they teach, to that specific industry and that specific business. In other words, your best way to reach your target accounts in account-based sales development is by sharing not generic thought leadership, but by sharing true commercial insight. And again, I'll reiterate, where that commercial insight teaches them, ideas that are relevant, that help them move their business forward, and does it in a way that is tailored to their industry and specific business. That's what works. And if you can do it well, it's really effective, but it takes work. You have to sweat the details here. For your top accounts, you're going to create rich, detailed account plans. You're going to understand the industry. You're going to understand, to read the 10K, map out the buying centers. You're going to understand who knows who and who influences who in the account. And you're going to understand your door openers and your ways into the account. And then again, you're going to use that to create completely customized campaigns. Now maybe for a Tier 2 account, as I said, a lighter level of research, and instead of creating completely customized content, maybe you'll just stick their logo on a cover of an existing piece of content, and then more importantly, customize the first paragraph and the last paragraph. So it seems like it's something that's written to them, but it's really just started based for their industry. That's what's going to work to reach out to these target accounts, especially if you're trying to reach out to executives. Okay, take a breath. We've now talked about the importance of picking the right accounts and then making sure we're really relevant when we reach out to them. Now finally we get to the where. How are we going to do it? Well, there's a whole set of marketing channels that you can use. As I said earlier, you can invite them to dinners. You can send direct mail. Direct mail is a great door opener, by the way, as part of a sales development campaign, because if you think about how many emails somebody gets per day versus how many packages show up on their desk, you can see that direct mail breaks through the clutter. But to reiterate my point earlier, it's the sales development team that's the tip of the spear here. When you really want to connect with decision makers, that means sending them a human email. It means making a phone call. It's leaving a voicemail. It means a social touch. By the way, what do I mean by human email? Well, what I mean is if you changed out the company name on that email, but you could still send the email otherwise, right, it's not relevant enough. It's got to be personalized to the account. Now, you've got all these channels and tactics at your disposal, but what you don't want to do are random acts of account-based everything. You don't want to just do an email campaign or just send some SDRs off on a triple touch, double touch cadence. What you want are to build plays. And plays are a series of steps that orchestrate interactions across departments and channels to achieve a specific business purpose at some of the buying centers at your target accounts. And I use the word play very consciously here because we're really talking about two teams, right? We've got, multiple players in our team. It's not one lone SDR. And at a complex account with multiple decision makers and influencers, we got multiple players on their team. And just like a football coach is going to map the X's and the O's so everybody knows what to do when, a account-based everything play is all about orchestrating the interactions across departments and channels to make sure that the right people are interacting with the right people in the right way. What I'm really talking about here is the idea of team selling. And team selling is a little bit of a lost art, except for the largest and most complicated deals. So think about what you do when you're going after your number one most strategic account. That account executive is playing the quarterback, and they're coordinating, marketing and sales development and your executives and all these other people working together. That's what you want to aspire to. Use your whole team. Think about it back to football. You wouldn't put 11 wide receivers on the field and hope it's going to work because they're just going to get crushed by the linemen and nobody will throw the ball to them. If you want to move the ball down the field, you need players in each position working together as a team. And that's the same thing that's true for account-based everything. Don't send your lone SDRs off to go penetrate to executives at your top accounts. Take advantage of all your tools, marketing support, executives, the sales team, and so on. And to make all this work, you really need to think about who's the coach. Right? The coach writes the plays and designs the playbook, and is the one who's sort of saying, this is how we're going to coordinate everybody's activities. In my experience, the best coaches are a team that's really involving both the sales development manager and the marketing operations or demand generation person, because you're really thinking about coordinating and synchronizing between those different departments. Let me give you an example of a simple play here. So this is an email that we used, was a play we used to try to invite executives from our target accounts to come to a reception at Dreamforce. And if they responded to the reception, then we would then further ask if they'd like to have a demo and a meeting while at the event. So as you can see here, the email comes from me. We have found that when trying to reach executives, we, not surprisingly, have a way better response rate on personalized emails that come from me than if they come from the individual SDR. But I don't have time to personalize 400 emails. And so our system lets the sales development rep, in this case Taylor, go to each email and customize it. In this case, you customize it based upon people I know in common with the recipient. Obviously, there's other ways you can customize an email based on industry and so on. All I then had to do was approve the final email from my phone or from my computer. And once I sent the email, there was a whole series of additional steps in the play that combine additional phone calls, social interactions, sending direct mail pieces, and so on. So that's a fairly simple play that's just about getting somebody to come to a dinner. A more sophisticated play for prospecting might look like this. This is based on a template from Topo, but it starts with researching the account, then running some ads to build awareness, and then maybe sending a direct mail package to kind of, again, kick things off. And then over the next 21 days, you have a series of 5 triple or double touches that don't just come from the SDR, come from SDRs and account executives and the company executive, ultimately with the goal of trying to get a human interaction, typically trying to get a meeting. So that's kind of another example of what I mean by the where. So next, I want to talk about, again, some hacks. Things to think about as you move to an account-based everything, account-based sales development world. The first thing is that I recommend that you don't ask your account-based sales development reps to generate BANT-level opportunities. Instead, you ask them to generate, AN-qualified meetings with the right person at the right company. Put another way, BANT works when you're fishing with nets, right? It's such a big market, you really want to winnow out just the ones that actually have deals going on in the next 6 months. But when you're fishing with spears and reaching out to big companies, you're unlikely to just happen to stumble upon active deals. And frankly, you want to actually be the challenger that helps to create the deal. And the goal, therefore, is to get your account executive a meeting where they can share that commercial or more of the commercial insight. So that's how I think you should measure and pay account-based sales development reps. I also get the question, well, where should account-based sales development report? Should it report up to marketing, to sales development? Should it be its own team? Well, this data from the Bridge Group, interestingly shows that the more the sales development team is focused on prospecting, the more likely it is to report up to sales. And in general, more sales development teams report to sales and marketing. Here's my view. I think that unless you're exclusively an enterprise business, presumably part of your sales development team is the farm team for AEs that then move into your corporate or mid-market business. And if that's the case, you don't want marketing being the function that's hiring and training your future sales executives. And so sales should be the kind of HR managers for sales development, responsible for hiring and training. But in terms of business outcomes, marketing is more aligned with sales development, because sales is trying to close deals. Marketing and sales development are both trying to create deals. And so marketing should therefore be responsible for coordinating the day-to-day activities, the workflow, and the plays of the sales development team. So as long as those two factors are met, I'm agnostic on where it reports. Marketing, sales, own division, doesn't matter. These are the things that matter. Another thing to think about on the technology side is what I call lead to account matching. Anybody who uses Salesforce, I'm sure, has run into this problem. Leads in Salesforce don't tie to your account. So as an SDR, you might get a new lead that shows up and not have any clue that it's actually part of an opportunity that's supposed to close next week. And so you call them up, and of course you're unhappy and they're unhappy because everybody seems disorganized. You've got to find a way to take all the leads and map them to the account. And that way, not only can you route the leads better, but more importantly, or just as importantly, you can understand what's happening at the account level and which accounts are really engaging with you and which ones aren't. And so you can do this in various ways. What we do is we do a fuzzy logic match. We're looking at Microsoft here, by the way. You can see how Danny Kaufman in the second row, we match to them even though they have a Gmail address, as well as Raj Bharti here, as well as, if you look at the first row, even if the company name is not quite right, so by fuzzy logic matching on these multiple fields, and then we expose that on the account object, so a sales development rep following up on a lead can very easily see who are all the other contacts that they have at that account and follow up appropriately. Now, speaking of following up with leads, I actually think in an account-based world, the right answer is to not follow up on leads, but to follow up with accounts. And in other words, get rid of the MQL, Marketing Qualified Lead, and instead embrace the MQA, or the Marketing Qualified Account. I think this is the next new big idea in measurement for B2B, is that we're all going to be talking about how many MQAs did we generate. And MQAs can look at both the depth of engagement as well as the breadth of engagement across an account. And when you get an engaged account, you don't have to follow up with the junior person who happens to download the white paper. You can intelligently follow up with the right people based upon achieving your goal of creating a strategic deal. The last hack I want to get to is really to illustrate the fact that measurement in an account-based world is different. In the traditional demand generation world, we're very focused on quantity. How many leads did you generate? How many opportunities did you generate? How many dials did you make? How many emails did you send? An account-based world needs to focus much more on quality. It's about, are we actually engaging and connecting with the right people on the right accounts? The number one mistake I see companies have as they enter an account-based initiative is they don't change how they measure success. And as so, it looks like failure because your quantities actually go down even as your quality and strategic nature of your deals goes up. Now, ultimately, in an account-based world, the best way to measure results is pipeline created and ultimately revenue. But when we're going after these strategic accounts that don't have active buying cycles, it's going to take time. And so what we need is a way to measure, are we making progress along the way? I'll talk about that in a sec. But one last point I want to make is in a team selling world, we're not trying to figure out attribution. We're not trying to figure out whether this was a marketing created deal or a sales development created deal, because in team selling, it's everybody's deal, and you need to give credit accordingly. At Engagio, our account development reps get credit for every opportunity created, regardless of whether or not they set the meeting or not. So as I said a minute ago, we need ways to track progress even before pipeline created and revenue. So I've come up with 6 metrics that I think are part of how we want to think about this problem. Number 1 is coverage. Do we have the right data and the right information for each account? If not, go get it. That's your first success. Number 2, awareness. If we've identified 800 accounts that we care about, well, how many of them have any clue who we are, have come to our website or opened an email or done anything in the last 3 months? Engagement, this is the holy grail. Are the key personas at the account spending time with our company? And if so, is that engagement going up over time? Right? That's quality and depth of the relationship. Reach is a measure of focus. It's not about counting how many people attended the webinar. It's how many of the right people from the right accounts attended the webinar. Because the higher the percentage of the right people, the more focused your program is, and therefore the more efficiently it reaches your target accounts. Lastly, impact is about measuring influence. We're not trying to assign credit here, but we do want to understand, is the stuff we're doing impacting the things we care about? So if I do a call blitz, right, my question is, do I create more pipeline at the accounts that got called than the ones that didn't? And if so, I can say, all right, that call blitz had some influence on creating pipeline, even if I'm not saying it gets 100% of the credit. So those are the 5 key metrics. One way to help remember them is to use the acronym I-CARE: Impact, Coverage, Awareness, Reach, and Engagement. All right, so now I'm excited to, as we near the end here, to actually talk to one of our customers, Mitchell, and hear, really their whole story of how they evolved to an account-based world. So Mitchell, can you just introduce yourself and tell us just a minute about Zapprove's business?
Yeah, sure. Hey, thanks, John and OpenView for having me through. So our company is Zapprove, and we are around 85 person SaaS company selling e-discovery software to upmarket Global 2000, Fortune 1000 companies, and being a small company, in this kind of narrow market of e-discovery, and at the same time trying to sell to the enterprise. We have a lot of competition that's real kind of name brand big companies we have to go up against, and even though we may not have the resources that they do, we want to use our ability to be nimble and agile, if you will, to our advantage and try to outflank them and beat them to the punch at some of these deals and finding the right people we want to talk to quicker than they can. So that's one of the reasons we wanted to really explore an account-based everything strategy to complement what we were already doing with demand gen. Like any company, we've had a traditional demand gen program going pretty well for quite a few years, but as we have growth goals and we start to see a little bit of a kind of a evening out or kind of a plateau in what we're being able to generate with demand gen. So it just made a lot of sense to come up with a complementary strategy to help us scale our growth.
All right, fair enough. Again, I think you probably kicked this off as an account-based marketing initiative, but as you've gone into it, how have you really built alignment across these different departments, making sure that everybody's involved?
Yeah, taking this approach, it becomes really, really, kind of obvious pretty quickly that it's not, the kind of, identify the personas, create the content, fire it out through marketing, kind of get those nets out there thing. When you move to this approach with spears, you can't really spearfish very well without having your spears there, and that is exactly what our sales and sales development, but really specifically sales development team is for us. So even before doing any sort of purchasing or rolling out any sort of program, the first thing was get some hype around the idea of this and get some alignment. And I really wanted to put my money where my mouth was and show that I was all about the alignment. My counterpart in sales development is actually sitting right here next to me, hanging out, listening to the webinar. We're looking at what John's presenting, kind of comparing it to what what we've rolled out so far. So alignment is everywhere. So for the marketing team itself, though, I really wanted to show, hey, you guys, this is an opportunity for, especially the content team, to really get into doing more targeted content, mid-funnel content, more bespoke content, and show their chops and give them an opportunity to do more different things than just kind of, the normal top of the funnel, thought leadership stuff. And then for sales, as John mentioned earlier, when we started kicking off the account planning, which John's absolutely right, you can't really do much without putting, the right proper amount of planning into these accounts. I was definitely ready to take a back seat and let them kind of dictate the direction and the pace. And I just used some of the framework that I've learned to be able to put some of the focus on that. And then also, when we started our program, really putting a focus on getting them some of those quick wins so we could show the success during that pilot phase to get people that were maybe a little more laggard or skeptical on the program really all about it after we could show territory through some quick wins. And then for the sales dev team, just the idea of putting demand gen, putting the same focus on target account marketing as we had on demand gen. We're giving air cover with demand gen to our SDRs. So what can we do to support our outbound? We call them ISRs, our outbound prospectors, get them some sort of air cover to get them more success.
I just, even that mindset there, I think is such a big one, right? I mean, traditionally marketing focuses on generating leads for the inbound folks, but have kind of left it up, to an exercise to the reader for the outbound folks to get anything going. In a nutshell, a big part of what we're talking about here is marketing supporting the outbound folks as much or more as they support the inbound folks.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really what it's all about. And I like what you said earlier about, kind of thinking about this is your farm team for your AE team. And, putting, we want our AEs closing deals. But a lot of this, kind of strategic thought can be assigned out to that, that outbound prospector that supports that AE. And so that's great training for when they become an AE. They have some of those skills, refined a little bit.
Yep.
Really
now you mentioned you did a pilot that kind of helped make everybody a believer. What were the tactics? What are the strategies and tactics that you're used in the pilot and you're using today to actually then engage with the target accounts?
Yeah, getting into this and starting to do a little account planning, leading the selection process, helping guys focus on the right amount of accounts. We kind of took, for this pilot phase, really the idea of the kind of the ABM light, kind of that mid tier of what you showed earlier. So we could not worry about honing in on one account right away, but we could do more like kind of high value industry plays or high value use case content, and that's really what kind of kick-started the breakthrough that we had and kind of helped us bust through that plateau. Kind of getting that cadence, the sales team used to doing that kind of planning, being able to knock out some plays for those type of mid-level accounts, like that tier 2, I guess you could call it, and then get that down and then start moving into more tier 1 plays. So specifically on tactics, some of the stuff we have is just like anytime you have like a quarterly theme that comes along with a product release or a go-to-market, you've got some sort of theme behind that. Doing a nice door opener direct mail to some traditionally elusive accounts was really great. I wish I could drop some names right now. They're not pre-approved, but some of the accounts that we had just had zero luck in trying to call and email relentlessly into some really just nice, creative direct mail really helped open the door there. And now we're moving into more, as full-on omni-channel as we can get. Spencer, who's sitting right next to me, my counterpart in sales development, has been really good at kind of managing, hey guys, let me help you with your targeted, prospecting email outreach, make sure those are really, effective, and then I'm backing him up with, the advertising, the specific content needs that might come from that. And yeah, again, I guess I really can't emphasize enough, as John mentioned earlier, if you're doing specific content that's targeted to open up and engage some of these accounts, it really is only as good as that targeted follow-up that happens after that. And we've started to, have some real nice connections happening there, which has really helped play through these plays fully from marketing to sales and helped open up a lot of success.
That's awesome. All right, so I talked a little bit about measurement and the 5 key metrics that I sort of talk about, moving quality to quantity. How are you looking at measurement?
Yeah, I'm, as many of us are, I'm kind of a measurement junkie, and especially getting into something new, you kind of want to, I kind of take the approach of just kind of over-measuring a little bit, trying to look at as many different, slices and dices and views, but it really is all about focusing on the key metrics that you want to track and then kind of, extrapolating off that. So the first thing was just kind of some simple dashboards to monitor selection for each territory. First thing I would say is I'm all about getting everything natively into Salesforce. I'm kind of a believer of I have, you have different platforms you're looking at, but you want to have the ability or the option at least to get everything into Salesforce, because that's how you're going to cross-reference that with stuff that sales has set up, getting them to even look at it. You want, kind of a Salesforce first approach just to kind of get some adoption, started out the right way.
Totally.
So the first thing is, what is the engagement? I like the idea of looking at it trailing, because that kind of, as a moving target, it kind of puts you always on the spot to be consistent. So you've got to keep that up. Once you kind of set a benchmark on engagement minutes, and you want to have a different benchmark for how much am I engaging all the accounts per territory, all the targets, how about all the Fortune 500, or how about all customers? I want to see each one of those per territory, and to make sure that the types of activities we're doing are resonating and creating that engagement. And then next level on that, number of MQAs. If we're getting critical mass on engagement, we should be generating MQAs. And, Spencer and I, when we set our MQA threshold, we kind of made an agreement, it's got to be 3 people for, 50 minutes in the trailing 3 months, everybody with at least 10 minutes. So we kind of came to an aligned agreement on that. So now I'm making sure that I'm generating a number of those monthly, kind of setting a benchmark, trying to consistently beat the benchmark, but also, MQAs are only as good as how many of these I'm bringing in our targets. So what percentage of our MQAs are targets? And then also, once we're bringing these in, how are they progressing? We can look at a trailing 3 months of MQAs, but that's only as good as are we progressing that account status to like meeting, off, customer, etc. So we're always putting ourselves on the spot for generating MQAs, but they have to be a certain number of target accounts in there, and we also have to be progressing those, or else we aren't really playing this whole idea through to success. Then after that, pipeline. As John mentioned, we kind of switched from, coming from a demand gen world, it's all about, I think I heard the CMO of Palo Alto Networks once say, as a marketer, your job is 2 things. It's find the buyers and deliver pipeline. So I've always kind of held that really close. But then switching to this, we're not really trying to source pipeline. We're trying to help our outbound prospectors do better and have more success at sourcing their own pipeline. We're kind of, instead of like passing the ball for an assist, we're kind of like setting that screen to help them create their own shot, So how much of our influence pipeline is coming from account-based marketing, and then also just looking at influence pipeline as a key metric rather than source pipeline. So I think that really covers most of what we're trying to look at. I'll probably, once I figure out more of like what's important for us on this, I'll kind of, pare this down a little bit and concentrate on probably a few parts of this, but this is everything I'm looking at right now.
Great. And, I guess to wrap, you mentioned, I think very rightly so, it's got to be in Salesforce if you want your sales team and then your SDRs to look at it. Can you, tell us kind of what are you putting into Salesforce to help them understand all this account-based stuff?
The first thing is with the help of lead to account matching, which is, like you said, anybody that uses Salesforce knows where the pains are there. That's really helped, when we're looking at, we're selling accounts now instead of leads. It's helpful to have everything on that account and being able to get all of the leads attached to the account and have that be, that really, on like a real nitty-gritty tactical level, really helps you with your data quality, because you can link your account level data, which is much easier to manage, down on all of those matched leads and contacts. And, I've seen even improvements in our lead scoring and creating accuracy just because we can use Salesforce and workflows and, some of that to automate a lot of our data quality. And that's setting up the SDRs for more, and ISRs for more success, because now they have to do that much less research to be able to find that right data to be able to make that targeted or relevant follow-up. So that's been the first thing that's been really helpful. And then the second thing is just straight up getting all those metrics that I just talked about, getting all that on a dashboard in Salesforce, so I can communicate that out to the full team. We do our kind of like our war rooms, every few weeks doing plays. But part of that is we're also all looking at all the metrics that we've been doing and been tracking at for that specific territory, over since last time we met, so that can kind of dictate what are we having success with, what is not working, and that kind of helps us manage our time and be able to knock out in a 30-minute meeting a metrics review and some account planning alignment, and even whip up a couple plays right on the spot there. So those two things alone have been just complete game changer. Just making just a lot more consistency of knowledge of where we're at, what the status is on accounts, data, all the relevant stuff we need to know. Everybody kind of knows the same thing. Been super helpful.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you very much. And I just love the fact that you have your sales development leader there, as well, kind of as part of this whole thing. I think that goes a long way to sort of show the alignment that you've built to this process.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So I know we're nearing the hour here, everyone. To wrap, there's one last slide I wanted to share, which is what I call the account-based everything market map. And this is really to reflect the fact that there are a lot of technology vendors out there talking about how they support account-based marketing or account-based everything. So what I've done here is I've tried to map the vendors to the who, what, where, and then infrastructure process. So in the left column, you see the who vendors, data vendors and predictive vendors that can help you figure out who to go after and which contacts. In the purple, the what, these are the vendors that are going to help you understand the account and understand the people so you can maximize relevance. And there's overlap, by the way, with these categories in some cases. In the where, the top row is you see the marketing channels, things like account-based advertising, web personalization, and direct mail. And then the second row are the more sales development or human channels, things like human email, phone dialer, social. Underneath all the interaction channels in green, you see orchestration. And this is primarily Engagio, but we sort of work peacefully and nicely with the marketing automation tools. And this is where you synchronize your interactions into plays. And then across the bottom is your account-based infrastructure, things like lead-to-account matching, lead routing, ABM analytics, as well as your account planning in your CRM. So Engagio plays in the human email category, competing with tools like Outreach and SalesLoft, but also in the orchestration category as a marketing platform you're going to use to run plays, and then in the bottom in the account-based infrastructure category. And then you see all the companies that we are natural partners with across all the other interaction channels, data, and insight vendors. If you like the idea of account-based sales development and you want to learn more, grab a copy of my book, The Clear and Complete Guide to Account-Based Sales Development. It's 140 pages long. Trust me, it's a pretty fast, easy read. It's got lots of charts and graphics, and you can get a free copy at engagio.com/guide. So I wrap every presentation I give with what I call the tweetable takeaways for anybody too lazy to think about what to tweet themselves. So you can take a look at these, and if you have any other questions or comments for me, you can always find me at John Miller on Twitter. And with that, I'll leave these up and hand things back to Casey. I know there's just a couple minutes, but happy to answer any outstanding questions.
Great. Thank you, John and Mitchell, for awesome discussion and conversation today. Must have obviously resonated very well because there were no additional questions. But for the audience, if questions do come up as you sort of take a look at the deck and go back to your teams, please filter them through me, and I can work with John to get those answered for you. So as I mentioned in the beginning, I will be sending out the deck and recording of this presentation, so keep your eye out for that. And for those of you who are interested, our next webinar will be on December 7th with Allison Pickens, the VP of Customer Success at Gainsight, as we discuss how to build out your customer success team and how to measure their ROI. So that being said, again, John and Mitchell, thank you so much. And to everyone else, thank you for attending, and we look forward to having you at our next event. Hello?
John's still here. Are we in speaker room?